Hi, we're senior cadets of the Blue Mountain Battalion here with the Medal of Honor recipient Colonel Jacobs. Colonel, thank you for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
I'm just going to start off. We're all about to commission in a few hours here. Just quick question on being young lieutenants. When you went out first being commissioned, what things did you see in your future? Do you have any plans, and how did that kind of end up comparing to what actually happened and where your career went?
Well, when you're 21 years old, very few people have plans. My objective was to go serve in the Army and get out after 3 years, do my bit, and then go to law school. 20 years later, I was still in the Army. And I stayed because I thought the mission was important, but also because I love the people. That's what kept me in the Army, and that's what keeps me involved with the Army even today.
Sir, and Colonel Jacobs, how can new second lieutenants prepare themselves and professionally develop themselves to lead platoons of soldiers who have deployed multiple times to Iraq and Afghanistan?
Well, you got to know your business, first of all. First and foremost, you have to be technically and tactically proficient. Some people get lazy and figure that because they wear the rank, that a priori means that they know what they're doing and they know what they're talking about. But I can tell you from experience, that's not the case. And being a soldier is one of those things that requires continuous updating. So first and foremost, you have to know your business. That's the only way you're going to get the respect of those people who've been deployed many times, have had lots more experience than you. And you've got to exercise your authority and responsibility with professionalism. That's the way people, they won't get to like you necessarily, but they'll certainly respect you. And you'll be able to accomplish what you need to accomplish, both with them and with the unit in difficult times.
Sir.
Sir, in your 21 years in the Army, what was your most rewarding experience?
Well, they were all more or less rewarding. Some, like being in the hospital, wasn't particularly rewarding. But most of I'm the wrong guy to ask because I never, ever spent any time with troops above the level of battalion. So I was very lucky in that regard. Matter of fact, I worked strenuously to avoid being on staffs and so forth. I liked being with soldiers. So anytime I was with soldiers, it was rewarding. That included being a company commander and being a battalion commander. But I also enjoyed teaching at West Point. The Army sent me to graduate school, and then after I went back to Vietnam for a second tour, came back and taught at West Point, where I still am. I've got an endowed chair at West Point. I'm up there one day a week teaching an elective, and it's interesting to look at the cadets and remember that 40 years ago, among my students were Ray Odierno, who was the Chief of Staff of the Army, and Marty Dempsey, who is the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and they were sitting in a classroom in a circumstance pretty much like you are now, about ready to graduate and take on the world. Being with troops is the best thing you can do.
Sir, having read the citation for your Medal of Honor, what drove you to, while injured and under enemy fire, to keep evacuating casualties and reorganize your unit?
Well, it's an interesting concept, being in a small organization with lots of people where there's a large group fervently trying to kill all of you. I mean, there's nothing that focuses your mind like the crucible of combat. And all the things that you plan for combat, all the ways in which you train for combat, no matter how good they are, they can't possibly prepare you for the actual time that you're in combat. But there's one thing that becomes abundantly clear the first time you get shot at by a hostile force, and that is how close you are to all those people in your unit. You may not know them very well. You probably have very little in common with them, but it's astonishing how bound up you are with them and their fate because you are they are with yours. When things get really, really difficult, and it looks like they can't get any worse, and they really can, what keeps you all together is the fact that you are all together. I'm reminded of the observation of Benjamin Franklin, who said during the Revolutionary War, he said, "We either hang together or we will surely hang separately." And that's mostly what propels people in difficult circumstances to do what they otherwise wouldn't do. It's a love for one another. We fight for the country and we fight to accomplish the mission, but most of all, we fight for each other, and that's what gets people to do things they otherwise wouldn't do.
So with us going into the Army now, very unsure of what we may encounter with drawdowns, budget cuts, 2 wars ending. It's kind of an unclear future for the Army, and in contrast to maybe what you experienced, what can you suggest to us to what kind of skills should we hone, what kind of things should we do to prepare for whatever might come our way?
Well, what's interesting about that comment is that it reminds me of the French observation that the more things change, the more they stay the same. When the people I was just talking about, Marty Dempsey, Ray Odierno, McChrystal, Petraeus, were all graduating from West Point. They were going into an Army that looks a lot in terms of resources, in terms of mission orientation, pretty much like the Army looks like today. We just come out of a war that lasted 10 years. We lost 58,000 people killed and several 100,000 wounded. A very, very bad experience for everybody. And they were convinced that that was it. We were not going to go do that again, ever again. And here we are, here you are, in the same situation when it seems like there's no way we're going to need to fight anymore. We won't be fighting. And so how do I focus myself? Trust me. I mean, I hate to say this, but the likelihood is very high you are all going to have to fight at some juncture. We live in a very dangerous world with multifarious threats across the world, and we are deployed in a wide variety of places we have never been deployed before, all dangerous. You better be prepared to do your job as if you were leaving Dickinson and the very next day deploying on the forward edge of the battle area with a bunch of battle-hardened soldiers. Everything you do is important. If you think that times are not going to get difficult for you as a leader, that you're just going to be able to slide by, and I know that's not what you're suggesting. You're really worried that you're not going to be able to put to work all the things that you learn, that you're not going to be able to exercise your opportunity to be a leader and be whom you know you can be. Well, that's all wrong. You're going to have plenty of opportunity to excel, and the only thing I can do is to suggest to you what I suggested earlier. Get really, really good at your job, because that's the only way you're going to be confident enough to elicit the respect of people who work for you and whom you're going to have to lead in extremely difficult circumstances.
Yes, sir. And just looking beyond at your civilian career to the military, what lessons or values have you taken from the military and applied them to the business sector that you work in now?
Well, all of them. All of them. Well, my last assignment was teaching at the National War College in Washington, and I left to go to Wall Street. I got calls from guys who were students of mine at the time who grew up to be generals and admirals and ambassadors and so on, but they were colonels at the time, asking me, how was it out there? And I told them, but I'll tell you, all the stuff that I really needed to know on the outside was exactly the thing, all those things that I'd learned when I was a young soldier. The principles of war and focusing on the objective, making sure you take care of you know what resources you have, planning for the unknown, unity of command. And so all the things that you learned as cadets here at Dickinson are exactly those kinds of things which people who are on the outside, to the extent that there is an outside, who are captains of industry and leaders in their fields, either know because they served in the military or they know instinctively because those are the right things that you have to be able to focus on. No, everything that I learned as a young soldier stood me in good stead when I got out and I pursued a civilian career. All of it. So don't forget anything that you learn. You'll use it again.
Thanks, sir.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Thank you, sir.